In 2013, LG released two flagship devices, namely the LG G2 and the Nexus 5. Now the Nexus 5 is of course part of the Google Nexus lineup, in which Google hires manufacturers in order to manufacture them a piece of hardware. LG was also chosen as the manufacturer for the Nexus 4 and again have been chosen for the Nexus 5. And it's said that the Nexus 5 is the Nexus version of the G2. But there are of course some differences, but all in all they are very similar. Now they both run off the Snapdragon 800 quad-core SoC at 2.26 GHz with 2 GB of RAM and the Adreno 330 GPU to handle all that visual effects. Now in any comparison, what is really interesting is not how the device is similar, but how the devices are different. So we're gonna take a look at what's different about the LG G2 and the Nexus 5. Even though these two devices are very similar, there are some differences in the hardware department. For example, the Nexus 5 is a 4.95 inch screen and the G2 is a 5.2. But the physical footprint is pretty much the same. And this is because LG is the master of thin bezels, and the LG G2 has an impressive a little bit over 75% screen to body ratio, where the Nexus 5 is at 72. It's still high, but this is higher. They use the same resolution though, so you do have a larger pixel density on the Nexus 5, but the difference is so minor that you don't really notice it. Now another point of difference in the hardware department of these two devices is the placement of the physical buttons on the device. On the G2 you have the volume rocker and power button right here on the back of the device, where you on the Nexus 5 have the more traditional power button on the right and volume rocker on the left side. Now if the new placement on the G2 is something that you'll like and prefer over the old method and traditional method on the Nexus 5, I'm not able to tell you because it's a very personal preference. This is really one that parts the water, and people either like the new one on the back or they hate it and want to go back to the traditional button layout. I myself kinda like it. I think it's very cool, it's new, that's one thing, and it's comfortable to use because that's where my finger is anyway. The speaker on these two devices is not good. It's passable, but it's not really that good. But if I were to choose one, the G2 has the louder speaker and it has more detail, even though it can be a bit more tinier. Yeah. The design of the two smartphones are very similar, but most smartphones these days you have the chocolate bar shape with some rounded edges. Of course there are some differences in these devices as they do not look exactly the same. The G2 is a way more rounded device in both behind and how it is held in the hand, where the Nexus 5 has a more square and hard edges kind of look to it. But the biggest difference is of course the material used on the back. The G2 is made with a glossy black plastic with a little design detail, which also adds a little feel to the back. The Nexus 5 is made from a matte black soft touch plastic that feels more premium than the glossy hard plastic from the G2. The G2 has more rounded back that sits better in the hand than the more square design of the Nexus 5. And the more squared and hard-edged design language of the Nexus 5 might give people with smaller hands some issues when using the device in a one-handed operation, because they might feel that it's cutting into their hand. The Nexus 5 have much of the same hardware as the G2, but that's not the case when you talk in terms of camera. The G2 has a 13 megapixel camera and the Nexus 5 has only an 8 megapixel camera. On the other hand though, they have both got optical image stabilization, back illuminated sensors with an f2.4 aperture and an LED flash. But there are some differences in the quality of the pictures they take with a little win to the G2. That might be because of the higher pixel count. On the other hand, on the video side, the Nexus 5 wins out. Not because the quality of the video is better on the Nexus 5, but because the autofocus on the G2 is way too aggressive. it tries to find focus when it's already in focus. It's better now than it were in the start because of some software updates, but it still has the potential to ruin a video. Both devices are of course powered by the Android operating system. The difference is that the Nexus 5 is powered by an Android version directly from Google, and the LG G2 is powered by an Android version from LG with their custom UI on top of it. This means that users will get nearly instant updates with the Nexus 5 and be on the cutting edge of the Android ecosystem. But the G2 on the other hand comes with a lot of extra features that really help enhancing the user experience for less tech-savvy persons. One of these features on the G2 is the knock-on feature. It allows you to turn on the screen of the device by a double tap and also turning it off. I really like the knock-on feature because it adds value to the phone. Now, it was slammed in a lot of initial reviews because they have a hard time getting it to work. But after using it some time, you kind of get into the groove and you learn how to do it right, and it pretty much works every time for me. Another feature on the G2 is the option to use it as a universal remote, which I find very useful. The LG UI in general are more user-friendly to the less tech-savvy person, where the Nexus 5 caters to the more tech-savvy crowd that likes to manually set up their device and have more control over it. The G2 comes with a lot of features right outside the box that helps the user use the device. Features like knock-on and the quick settings menu really improves the user experience of this device. These are all features that people will miss when using a device that does not feature them. The Nexus 5 have a better pixel density, but the difference is so minute that you probably won't be able to tell the difference, and the hard edge design of the Nexus 5 can also be a problem for people with smaller hands in one-handed operation. On the camera front, the G2 also wins, but on video it loses to the Nexus 5 because of the aggressive autofocus on the G2. Since the G2 has dropped in price, these two devices cost nearly the same. And looking past the stigma of custom Android versions and late updates, the G2 is the better phone. It has a better camera and sits better in the hand. In conclusion, I would probably suggest the Nexus 5 to people that are more tech savvy and like more control over the device and like to set things up manually. On the other hand, I would suggest the G2 to the less gadget-minded segment or people just looking for a good phone. But either way, whichever one you choose, you won't regret it. The G2, the Nexus 5, fight! I'm the better phone, I'm pure Android. Essentially. Thanks for watching my video. I've been Thompson with Crowd Reviews, and this was our comparison of the G2 and the Nexus 5. If you want more content of this type, please don't hesitate to click that subscribe button and it will come automatically within your YouTube feed. Also, if you liked the video, don't hesitate again to press that like button and leave a comment if you have any questions, and I will answer them to the best of my abilities. That's all for me now. Have a great day. It's not really fair, but it is true that in the beginning you might have a hard time getting it to work properly, but after some time you get to learn it. Fuck me.